All right, we are live. Alireza, what's going on, dog? Good to see you here.
Hi, Nick. Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to jump into Natix. It's one of these kind of cool deep in projects. I know that you had a pretty good conversation with Mark Little over at Streamer the other day on this thing, and you guys are excited about this like supercomputer in your pocket idea.
That's true. That's true. I wrote an article as well with the guys from Peak, whom
Yeah,
I
with
think
Leonard.
you brought Max here. Yeah, exactly. And this was basically talking about why we believe, Web3 or especially DePIN needs an iPhone strategy or a phone strategy.
Yep.
And the way that we look at it is like if you look at the companies that try to sell hardware, the latest example is being Meta with the Oculuses. It didn't go very well, right? Selling hardware when it's not needed, it's a tough business. You don't want to go there, right? And then for many applications, when it comes to DePIN, you can already support them with your smartphone. Not everything, but for many applications you can. So, for example, when you're talking about, um, let's say, putting a 5G relay node in a smartphone, that's
Yep.
impossible, or LoRaWAN. So Helium could have not done it. But if you want to tap into the Bluetooth or camera or GPS of your smartphone, you have all the means to, and then we have more and more of these devices that are equipped with AI chips. So you might not know, but any iPhone newer than iPhone 11, they have Bionic chip, which is an AI accelerated chip.
Mhm.
Any Android newer than 4 or 5 years old, they're running on Qualcomm Snapdragon or some similar chipset. So they're actually very powerful.
Yeah.
Combine these two, I think it's a sensor hotel that you can find in everybody's pocket. So you can tap into that, and people don't buy iPhones for the ROI to give them Lambos, right?
Right.
They buy it because the ROI is already there, going on Instagram or messaging people or for work or
Yep.
whatnot. So if they can also, monetize it towards one of these, let's say, deep networks or deepens, then why not? It makes all the sense in the world, and that's why I mean this was an idea, this was an hypothesis. To be honest with you, when I came up
Yep.
with it a year ago, looking at the successful models out there, and then kind of comparing, in deepen, and then we actually launched our own product, a few weeks ago, or a
Yeah.
little bit over a month ago, and I think that the numbers spoke for themselves. The hypothesis was kind of validated.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, you've got a doctorate in wireless communication, so you know what you're talking about when it comes to this wireless stuff. Let's actually rewind. I forgot that probably should have talked a little bit about what Natix does. As far as I can tell, someone was asking me about it just before. They're like, "Oh, what do they do?" It's like to me, it looks a lot like Hive Mapper without the device. You just put the phone in your car, use the phone's camera. The camera doesn't transmit images back if I'm reading it right. It just transmits back what it sees. It's like, hey, there's a stop sign there, there's a speed limit sign there, there's a street light here, there's a whatever it is. So that you guys are really focused on the privacy side. Is that generally correct as far as what it's doing?
Yeah, I think you said it better than even I would say. So yeah, 100%. So
Okay.
basically what Natix was, before pivoting into Natix Network, we were a edge computer vision company. So we have optimized our AI so much that it can run on edge devices. Edge devices are devices with minimal computational power. Example is your smartphone, right? Or a little computer that you connect to a camera,
Yep.
or to a drone, for example. So
Yep.
this is the technology that we build, and we have a pending patent on how to make it 100% privacy compliant. I mean, 100%, you can never get 100%. It's a hard thing to claim that, but it's the highest level of privacy compliancy out there in the market. And
Yep.
essentially what I mean by that is that it stops the camera from even generating personal information like faces, number plates, and so on. So we took this patent, and there was a problem actually we realized with our Web2 model, which was, clients are interested to get this technology and to map the world and to collect information. We call it metadata, like where are the traffic signs, or
Yep.
cars and bicycles they can detect, or even complex event like traffic congestion. But the infrastructure cost is an issue. We're working actually with CCTV cameras. They cost $6,000 to uh, deploy and to maintain per
Yep.
camera. So you want to launch a 2,000 CCTV cameras within your city. It's a
It better
lot of
some money.
capex, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's why we kind of created Helium, but for smart cameras, and
Hmm.
that's what Natix Network is. So essentially, it combines our AI technology with 45 billion cameras out there. We started with smartphones, but it's CCTV. We already have the software for it. Drone cameras, eventually car cameras, to create the largest crowdsourced camera network. And the mission of this camera network is to map the world. And one big difference with Hivemapper is that they're working on street level imagery. So
Yep.
like Google Street View, for example, and we're doing it a little bit different. So the way that I would see it is that there are more on the static layer of the map, because you can use these street level imageries to build the base layer of the map, where the roads are, where the buildings are, and so
Yep.
on.
Yep.
And Natix is basically working on the dynamic layer on the map. So we basically sit on top of base maps that HiveMapper can provide, or Google is providing, to be the traffic layer, to be the pothole layer on the maps, then we have different levels of information with different dynamicness. So pothole is not very dynamic, but location of a car is very dynamic.
Hopefully it is. Hopefully it gets fixed pretty quickly.
I hope so too.
Yeah. Okay, so it looks like, or it sounds like that this isn't really a total competitor with HiveMapper, that you guys are doing slightly different things, and really there's a potential synergy there, which is always what Max and I are looking for with DePIN networks or DePIN projects, is saying, hey, where can these things work together? Because the world is so kind of big and mean and gnarly out there that we want to get all these projects working together as much as we can, so that everyone has the best chance of succeeding together. I know you've worked with the Peak guys. You said you co-wrote that piece with Leonard. You guys had a great quote in there about Web3 aiming at connected devices that people already have versus buying extra hardware and adding an extra value on top of the supercomputer in your pocket. I thought that was pretty cool. Walk me through. So it's available right now just on Google Play. It's not on iOS. It's coming soon though, right?
Correct. We will launch on Google Play because we wanted to get it out there. And iOS, we're doing final optimizations right now. It's actually on the beta testing stage. It is going pretty well. I just tested it this week. Was heavy testing. And we're optimizing, for example, to tap into this bionic chip that I told you. We're one of the few companies that, as far as I know, that we're tapping into Apple's AI chip. Other than Render, I know that they were also talking about it.
Oh, interesting.
I think this is very, very, very powerful. But yeah, iOS will come basically by end of this quarter, which is in a few weeks. But Google Play is already available.
Okay, and so if I have an Android phone, I can be out there earning the token.
100%. Well, you cannot earn the token.
Or not yet.
We have a Web 2.5 model, and I have a reason for that. It's very interesting. So, and the analogy that I make is that if you know these move to earn, let's say, projects that are out there, we're not STEPN, we are 𝐒𝐮𝐻𝐻𝐿, if you know them. So basically, and 𝐒𝐻𝐻𝐿 has 140 million users, and that's one of the reasons that they're doing that, right? So you earn points, and you can convert these points into crypto, but also other goods and services. So you can get electronics, you can get vouchers, you can get Oculuses and AirPods and so on. And this kind of helps us to get non-Web3 community, because a lot of these taxi drivers and Uber drivers and a lot of people, they don't understand what crypto is. I mean, crypto is everything for us, but to their world, it's a fugazi, right? It's dangerous, and I think it enables us to bring them in and educate them. And I think that's why a company like 𝐒𝐻𝐻𝐿, which is also a DePIN, by the way, they're just health data DePIN, smartphone DePIN. They don't talk about it, but they
we'll
are. I think. Yeah, you should. Oleg is building something crazy on 140 million user. I think. Correct me if by number, I think they are the largest DePIN network, DePIN that is out there by now. If there is anything larger than 140 million, you let me know. But that's to the best of my knowledge, they're the largest one.
Yeah. No, it's crazy to see how fast they can grow. And I saw the stats in the paper that you guys published where Helium was at 1 million. There's one at 7 million. There's one at whatever, and then this at 140. And it really does make you wonder. One of the exciting parts about being in this thing right now at the very birth of the whole DePIN space is that we don't really know the right way to do it, right? It could be this way where it's like, use the phone in your pocket. It could be another way where you're using specialized hardware. Like you said, you don't have LoRa on your phone. So there's no real kind of perfect right way. And it's really cool to see all the projects experimenting with it. So
Agreed.
Rad thing to see Natix do. What's next for you guys? Is it just getting the iOS app out the door, or is there other stuff that you guys have going on?
No, there's a lot of other stuff. So something that is very interesting, we're going to release new driver assistant applications. This is the most exciting part of the app that I always talk about. The first driver assistant application was a dash cam, which you can record, the last 60 second or 120 second of your trip. But we are also launching network effect applications. This is, I think, super important for any DePIN, because what you probably know that as well, what a lot of DePIN companies are suffering from is that they build the supply side because it's easy. You're giving people token. I mean, why wouldn't they build your supply side? And then the demand side is lacking, you know? And usually that's because you're selling B2B corporate, you know, you're selling innovation. Again, with crypto, it's very difficult. I mean, I was selling to the hardest category of businesses, which is governments before, right? So I know all about it. But what is very valuable is to make your supply side also your demand side. In our case, the drivers, right? And what we're doing is exactly that. So we're launching new driver assistant applications. For example, navigation is one of them. Obviously, we are working with partners. But what I mean by that is that the more people drive, let's say in New York, the more data they generate. The data has a feedback loop to improve this service locally in that area. And this is very, very powerful, because if with the right tokenomics model, again, as I mentioned, your supply side becomes your demand side. So this year, I think we're focusing a lot on that, and to launch, you know, a few network effect applications. So I think I already gave the spoiler alert on the navigation, but we have a couple of really, really cool ones that I think even in mobility, they would be unique. So, you know, give us up until Q2, Q3. We're going to go live with them, and then everybody will see. But I'm very excited.
Yeah. We'll have you back on and we'll talk about it then. I think that the thing that I always, you know, wonder with, especially with navigation, with mapping apps, is yesterday I went down to find a FedEx to drop off some packages. And I was like, my choices in my head were I use Google Maps or Apple Maps. And Apple Maps for me works better here in San Diego. It's going to be pretty hard. And not totally crypto native, but I'm about as deep in as you'll get. I didn't even think of it until kind of halfway through the drive. I was like, oh shit, I should have checked out Mapmetrics, or, you know, one of the other things out there. How are you going to get people to normalize using these things?
That's got to be the hard part. You know, not every, as you said, you know, this kind of models that we're building, they're very new, and it takes time. We're also experimenting, you know, a lot of different things. That's going to be the challenge for us. But, you know, what we realize is that, first of all, navigation by itself is not going to be enough. You will always find Google Maps, at least for a while, better, because the service is better. That's why in our Android phone, we didn't launch it in the first place, because you can do split screen on Android. You can have Google Maps, and then you can have Natix, you know, dash cam kind of drive an app on. So you don't need to really do that. But navigation, you know, on top of the earning potential that you have from it and other driver assistant applications, which I'm not going to spoil it here, it will make a difference. So if we can provide something that Google Map doesn't provide for you, then it does make sense for you to slowly say, okay, you know, yes, I know that maybe the traffic data is not as good as Google Maps, but it does make sense for me to use this. And then the goal is that we create a service that is good enough with this crowdsourced kind of terminology, that can compete with Google Maps. I think that's what Helion was doing when they built that. They wanted to build an infrastructure that can compete with Verizon and Telecom and so on. That's what Hivemapper is doing. They want to compete with Google Street View. And that's what we are doing as well. So I guess this is a challenge that all of us have. We have a long way to go, a lot of iterations. But yeah, I'm quite optimistic about it.
Okay. I love it. Well, I love ending on optimism. So I'd love to have you back on when you guys launch your next thing. Thanks a ton for coming on and telling us all about Natix. Where's the best place to find kind of more out about the project or to follow you?
Follow me on Twitter. But for the project would be www.natix.network.
Okay.
That's it.
And Natix.network.
Natix.network. And my Twitter, I think, is Alireza Ghods #2, if I'm not wrong.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'll check that. Yeah, that looks pretty close. Cool. Ripping, dude. Thanks for coming on. And we'll see you hopefully in a couple months, and we'll talk about the next big thing.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you for having me.
Heck yeah. Thank you.
Cheers.